Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Okay, so I know I kept saying I was gonna put this video up, and it took a little while to get up, but we are finally doing my review of We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix. Before I continue, I just want to say that if I seem a little out of it today, I did just get my booster shot, and I don't feel great, but I really wanted to get this video filmed and up. I'm trying to finish, today's the last day of November, I'm trying to finish a book today. So I might have one more book review for this month that goes up before my wrap-up. If not, my next video should be my wrap-up. Or my Twisted Retreat unboxing. That was supposed to be delivered yesterday, and then it was delayed. And they say it's supposed to be delivered today. I don't know. We'll find out if it comes or not, but I'm really excited for it, so I hope it does show up today. But yeah, so let's chat about We Sold Our Souls. I believe this is the second full-length novel from Grady Hendrix. Let's check real quick. Third, maybe? It's looking like third. But this is probably the least spoken about novels in Grady Hendrix's bibliography at this point. We have Horror Store, My Best Friend's Exorcism, Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, and Final Girl Support Group, which all get a lot of chatter online all the time. And this one is definitely kind of forgotten, which I think is interesting, because I do think that it's very on par with some of his other books. I think it's better than some of his other books. But I can also see why it could be polarizing for some people. So I'm going to read the back of the book really quickly for you guys, and then we're going to dive into this review. So it says, "Only a girl with a guitar can save us all. Every morning, Chris Pulaski wakes up in hell. In the 1990s, she was lead guitarist of Dirtwork, a heavy metal band on the brink of breakout success until lead singer Terry Hunt embarked on a solo career and rocketed to stardom, leaving his bandmates to rot in obscurity. Now Chris works as a night manager of a Best Western. She's tired, broke, and unhappy. Then one day, everything changes. A shocking act of violence turns her life upside down as she begins to suspect that Terry sabotaged more than just the band. Chris hits the road, hoping to reunite Dirtwork and confront the man who ruined her life. Her journey will take her from the Pennsylvania Rust Belt to a celebrity rehab center to a satanic music festival. A furious power ballad about never giving up, We Sold Our Souls is an epic journey into the heart of a conspiracy-crazed, pill-popping, paranoid country that seems to have lost its very soul." Okay, so I think before going into this, we need to talk about who Grady Hendrix is as a writer. If you've never read anything by Grady Hendrix, he is very good at blending humor with horror. He can write very funny, witty novels and have some of the creepiest, most unsettling scenes scattered throughout. He's very, very good at balancing this. He reminds me almost of like a Cabin in the Woods style writer. Like a lot of his books are very self-aware as to what they're doing or criticizing or critiquing primarily in like the horror or almost alternative genres. He pokes fun at a lot of things that take place in the music world, retail, all that jazz, horror movies in general, like cinema. He's a really interesting writer, and I really, really like him. The best thing I've ever read from him was My Best Friend's Exorcism. It's a 5-star read for me, my favorite thing he's ever written. Followed pretty closely by Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. That's the book that introduced me to Hendrix writing. It kind of set the tone. This book, however, didn't live up to those two. That being said, I do like it much more than Horror Store, which is his haunted IKEA story. I think that's a really clever concept, but I think it was his first novel, it was his breakout novel, and it's clunky in moments. Like, there are pieces that don't quite work for me, but I loved the overall idea. And that's kind of how I felt about We Sold Our Souls. It felt not fully fleshed out. It felt very draft-like. It felt like these really interesting concepts that were thrown together, but not fully refined yet. That being said, I thought it was very, very much superior to Final Girl Support Group, which to me just felt like a total cash grab. Which is funny because this is kind of what that book, like what this book is criticizing, is like the cash grab aspect of selling out. But I enjoyed this. So I'll just cut to the chase. This was a 4-star read for me. This was a low 4 stars. It could have hit 3. I really liked the beginning. I thought it was really interesting and cool and kind of really leaned into the character development that we were going to need for the overarching story. I thought the middle was very It was hard to get through, it was slow, it was boring, and it felt very cliche. And it just, every time I was reading it, I was like, there are so many plot holes and weird, like, just jumps and strange actions that characters are taking that I don't think their development has led me to believe would happen. There are certain characters who, in my opinion, do kind of unforgivable things and then are just immediately forgiven because it's needed to serve the purpose of the plot. So there were a lot of things that I thought were really just thrown together and could have been fleshed out more and really built up, and instead I felt like a lot of the words in some of this novel went into more making connections about obscure metal references or the lyrics, which there's a lot of lyrics in this novel because this novel is tracing pretty much the story, the like rock opera story of an unreleased record. And so most of the lyrics to the record are in there. Grady Hendrix, I think, is a great writer. Grady Hendrix should not write lyrics. They're really, really cheesy. And I understand, too, that they're supposed to be, like, this, like, 80s, 90s, like, fantasy-inspired metal music. But even for that, it felt very cheesy. Chris was an interesting character. Definitely not my favorite character. She was very, very flawed. Which I actually think lent itself to me kind of rooting for her a little bit more. There was definitely a side story about another girl going towards this music festival that I felt was just so unnecessary. Like, it just added information I didn't need and never went anywhere. Like, I really thought it was going to tie in much more cohesively with the end, but it didn't. So there was that. There was just a lot of useless concepts and ideas in this novel that I felt like could have been cut and would have made for a much stronger novel. And I think one of the reasons I think that is because there was a lot in this novel that didn't contribute to the overall climax or the overall plot or the overall mythology of what's going on. With living in, what is it, Iron Mountain, Black Iron Mountain? I don't remember. And like breaking the wheel and like following the story of Troglodyte. Like there's a lot of mythology that goes into it, and for as much as there is in this novel, I don't think it was ever explained. Like, I really don't quite understand how, I don't even know what you would call them, the keepers of the mountain work. I don't understand why they do what they do. I don't understand how they do what they do. Like, it doesn't make sense. This concept of souls is so important to this story, and yet it doesn't make sense to me at all. I feel like there's a lot of plot holes in this concept of soul sucking and losing your soul and what that does to you. And then by the end of the book, like, the consequences of losing your soul, like, don't matter anymore. So did it matter to begin with? Like, there's just a lot of plot holes in this. And it's just kind of this very egregious, over-the-top mythology that's never really explained, and the reader is supposed to just go along with it for the ride, and it just didn't work for me because I was just so confused. That being said, this book is fun. It's fun, and it's cheesy, and it's campy, and I feel like it's definitely the book that we should take the least seriously by Grady Hendrix. And I think if we go into this novel saying, okay, this is gonna have some darker moments, it's not very scary like some of his other things, but there's definitely some dark imagery and some dark ideologies and sequences in this book. But if you just kind of go into this and you're like, this is going to be super ridiculous and over the top, I think you're going to have fun. But you really can't read too much into it because you're not going to get the answers that you want from it if you look very critically at this book. I feel like if we took Grady Hendrix as he is a writer now and had him go through and re-edit this, I think we would get a much stronger, much more satisfying read. But I do think it laid the groundwork for some of the better stories that he has out now. Again, I wasn't a fan of the Final Girl support group. I felt it was a fine book, but in like having seen the extent of greatness that Grady Hendrix can produce, it was very, very much a disappointment to me. This, however, read more to me like a precursor. Like, I could see what he was going for, and he just didn't quite hit the mark. Whereas with Final Girl Support Group, I feel like he was just like, this is a cash grab, I don't care. And I'm really, really interested to see how he handles how to sell a haunted house. I think that concept for his upcoming novel is brilliant. Little concerned that it was like delayed 6 months. I believe it was supposed to come out in July. It's now coming out in January. But so did Stephen Graham Jones' My Heart is a Chainsaw sequel that also got pushed back. So I don't know what's going on with that. But yes, I enjoyed this. I did not love it. I really liked the flashbacks to the band Dirtwork in the 90s and the 80s and how they formed. I thought that was really fun. It was really cool. And as somebody who was like kind of worked sort of in and around the music industry, I felt that it nailed that. It really, really nailed the band that's popular in the underground but hasn't broken through for the mainstream kind of moment. Pretty much any emo band that you guys listen to in like 2009 to like 2014 that just never like solidified their stake in the game outside of like your circle. That's kind of what I felt reading this, you know, like bands like Alisana kind of come to mind, where they had like this huge moment in like 2010 and they were a really beloved band to people in that scene, but it never really went beyond that. So that's kind of how I felt reading about Dirtwork, and I really enjoyed that. It actually reminded me a lot of some of the scenes that I did like in Paul Tremblay's The Pallbearers Club. I really did kind of like the background info on like the dirty, grimy club scene in the music rock industry, and I thought that was really cool. The metaphor of like signing the contract and selling out is evil. It's like selling your souls. It's very cliche and it's very overdone, but I really kind of liked the extreme measures Grady Hendrix went to with this one. I just wish it had been executed better. Like the ideas were really, really there, and I really appreciated what he was going for. I just don't think at the end of the day it was polished enough to fully make sense. I did love reading it. There's been a lot of mishaps with music festivals lately, and this book was written before the vast majority of these mishaps happened. So it was really interesting kind of watching Grady Hendrix predict a lot of things that have happened. You can see that he's very, very inspired by Woodstock 99. Very, very inspired by Woodstock 99. So that was really interesting to see where he drew all of his inspiration from. I just wish it was more fleshed out. But if you're a Grady Hendrix fan and you liked My Best Friend's Exorcism, give this a shot. Again, I did think it was a stronger read than Horror Store. It was more fun. It was more engaging. It was more like kooky and over the top. But you do kind of need a vocabulary in metal as well, and I like to think that I have that vocabulary. This book taught me that I do not. There were so many like obscure references to bands that I either didn't even know about or only really know in passing, and like he really, really went hard on those references. And that's something that he does do in Final Girl Support Group, which I think worked a little bit better for me reference-wise, because I knew most of the references he was making. There were a few films that he really leaned into that I've never seen, like Silent Night, Deadly Night. Still haven't seen that, and that's a very important, pivotal movie to have seen for reading that book, which I thought was weird because it's really not like a top-tier slasher film that most people would see. Anyhow, 4-star read, enjoyable, not my favorite thing from Grady Hendrix. But if you were disappointed in Final Girl Support Group and you're looking for something to read, maybe pick this one up. Again, not polished, not great. The ideas are there, and I appreciate them. I just hope that he is going to have something tighter and stronger in the future for us. And just one more thing, because this drove me insane, but the whole celebrity rehab storyline, I hated. I hated the concept, I hated the execution, I hated every character in that storyline, and just how everything was like forgotten at the end of it. Like, this drove me crazy. Like the music festival, the traveling road trip, the Viking drummer, like all of that was cool and campy and funny and weird and quirky and made sense. But the celebrity rehab was so dismal and dark and just didn't go anywhere, and I don't feel was needed. And then nobody atones for those horrible actions taken. And people keep blaming Chris for so many things that she did for this horrible, horrible thing. And it's just this glaring plot hole that it's like, there's clearly time missing. She's clearly onto something, and everybody's just refusing to believe that that's what happened. Like, there's just so much that happens in the witch house with contract night and then the celebrity rehab that to me just did not make sense. And I feel like had that whole central concept, both of those, the contract night and then the celebrity rehab, been kind of reformulated or really dug into or even truncated, we would have gotten a much more solid story, because that's where most of my plot holes come from, is the reactions to contract night, because I still do not understand why certain people had certain reactions, and then just the whole celebrity rehab thing. It felt really weird and out of place, and it was kind of like Grady Hendrix was like, I really like this concept and I'm going to somehow force it into this narrative, and it just did not work for me. Anyway, that's my biggest criticism with this. That and obviously the lacking in development of the overall mythology and lore of the Troglodyte record. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I'm going to be posting 2 times a week, hopefully 3 times. Ideally Monday and Thursday, hopefully Saturdays too. We'll see. Once 2023 hits, I'm gonna hopefully have my schedule like way back on track. Once the holidays are over and all this madness with my career is over, everything will hopefully be good again. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you on the next one. Mwah.